here's your groundbreaking. So oftentimes we'll say, send us a picture, because it's hard for us to send a crew to something like that. So when we started doing our groundbreakings, I was like, you know what? I don't want to do a groundbreaking where none of the media show up. So I tied it back to, welcome. I tied it back to, I said, give me our most full school. What school is just bursting at the seams? And one of the principals in the room says, my school is. In fact, we've turned one of the closets into a space for kids. I said, you're kidding me. She said, no, we have desks in there. I said, okay, superintendent, I want to bring in media and I want to show that. Right? So we did it. And what I did in the PR and what I did in the PR release is I flat out said, we have kids learning in closets. Oh, and by the way, we're doing a groundbreaking. So their ticket into the classroom to see the kids in the closet was they had to come to my groundbreaking. So they came to the groundbreaking, we got that covered. Then they followed me to the other school and I showed them the classroom with the kids in the closet. That was the piece they wanted. That was the visual piece. And oh, by the way, my groundbreaking was covered. So the whole point is visual storytelling when you're talking about TV. Newspapers so much different. We laugh in the newsroom. We always say newspaper reporters don't even have to leave their desk. They could make all the phone calls. Now, a good reporter doesn't do that, of course, but in a pinch, they can do that all day. They could never leave the building. The photographer that they send out takes all the photos, right? Now, usually a good reporter goes out and likes to get the feel of it, interview everybody. It's a different feel, but it's a lot different. Radio tries to use sound, right? Natural sound to try and tell their story. We need all of it. In order for viewers to be engaged on the television side, or even in the digital space now. What we found, by the way, is when we put a story on digital, if it doesn't have a video attached, it gets skipped. The other thing that happens is slideshows. So even if we put up stills, let me tell you what slideshows blow up on fox21news.com. Hailstorms. Guess what? Everybody sends in their photos. We don't even do anything except take the photo, make sure that we have permission to use it, put it online, and we create a 15 picture slideshow, blows up on the website.
That's interesting, isn't
In
it?
fact, we'll even put those on TV, right? We'll just wipe from one photo to the next. We do the slow push, right? Then the next photo comes in. Because people love that stuff. It's visual. Okay. So for you guys, you have to think, okay, my nonprofit. So this is what we typically do. By the way, we've been doing this with Give since its beginning, since day one. So I think it's 14 years, 13 years now. 14. So we were there since day one. And when we first started doing this, the media pitches were a little rough. But over the years, they've gotten better because people have figured it out. And I'm going to tell you the tiers and how it works today. And I think that's what probably struck a chord most with Courtney and Rachel was hearing how the process goes for us on the TV side and how we tier it and we structure it. But in the beginning, the media pitch would say, what visuals do you have? And sometimes they would say, and if one of you in this room did that, I'm sorry, but it would say, we have a brochure. Okay, that does nothing for TV land, right? So then we would pass and go to the next one. The other thing, while whomever your PR person is probably super well spoken and can tell your story in 15 seconds or can tell your story in 2 minutes, what's more compelling? The person who works for the organization or the person who's touched by your organization? So if you can find those people, they make a better TV story. An example on that for us is we've done the Down syndrome walk here in town for 15 years. Every year we ask the organization, find us a family that has a child with Down syndrome that's willing to go on camera and tell us their story. So then we tell that story. Then after the story, we say, by the way, the buddy walk is this weekend. Go to the buddy walk and support Down syndrome. Blows up. Because people are far more interested than if we put up a screen that says Down syndrome walk, and then our anchor tells you about it. Because the story that preceded it gets everybody's attention. Same concept with you guys. So when we get the story ideas, when we get the pitches, and this can go beyond give, by the way. So at last check at the TV station, we probably receive close to 600 emails a day. And they all want our attention. And some of them are very good at it. Others not so good. Because they really don't have the pitch. They're not getting our attention. They just fall into line with everything else. Two things that help is they put the visuals at the top. We will have these visuals. That helps us decide. The second thing is name recognition. Right. And that's why I love coming to these types of things, because we get emails from people all day long, but we don't know them. So for instance, the sheriff PIOs or the Colorado Springs PIOs, they come to the stations and do tours and they introduce themselves. And that way we know, oh, this is the email that I get from you. You're the person that emails us, 15 times a week. Now I know who you are. Okay, so when we get the pitches, you fill out the form, they come to the television station. It's typically around 80. What is it going to be this year? Yeah, it's been 70, 60, 80, 65. So we get 65 pitches. Okay. So then we start going through the pitches and looking for the visuals, looking for the story, looking for how can we make this good TV. Here's how it works. What's the mothership, do you think, at Fox 21 News? What do you think is our mothership? What do you think has the most eyeballs? And here, I'll give you a hint. We have a 4-hour morning show from 5 to 9 a.m. We have a 5, we have a 6:30, we have a 9, we have a 10. What show, let's say, total guess. What show do you think does the best?
6:30 at night.
Nope. 9.
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock. And here's why. When I was anchoring, I used to say, I've been putting people to sleep for years.
What's this board, Mom?
9 o'clock newscast was convenient. And if you want to go to bed, you don't have to wait till 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Right? We still make you wait for the weather. Yes, I know.
It's the news guy. He's a news anchor.
That's part of our hook. We do
I could
it
have been
and it's
in
all by design.
Must
Give
be
you the weather at
faster.
the
Can
top
you
and
please
turn it off and
mute
go to
your
bed.
mic?
9 o'clock is convenient. And it's an hour and we have no competition. Because the only person that could start up a 9 o'clock newscast would be the CW. We own it. So we'll never start at 9 o'clock to compete against ourselves. 2 stations tried to do a 9 o'clock on their sub channel. You've all seen the sub channels. There's like 11. KKTV has 11. It's 11.1 and they have 11.2, 11.3, 11.4. They tried to stick 9 o'clock news on those and they all got destroyed. Our 9 o'clock is an absolute juggernaut. The morning show would be second because the morning show does really well. It just depends on the hour. Okay, at 5 a.m., we're not number 1, but that's okay because not a lot of TVs are on yet. And whenever you ever look at a ratings chart, you can see as the hours go on, you can see more and more TVs turning on, right? And then it crashes again after like 9:30, 10 o'clock. Most people are either at work at that point. So 5 a.m. we're number 1. 6 a.m. I think the last book we're number 2. And let me say, when I say that, I'm always talking about 25 to 54-year-old adults. That includes men and women. That's the demo we sell to. That's who sales goes out and sells to. Those are the people spending the money. We also reel in the women, which is also what we want. Because as advertisers will tell you, the women are the one making the decisions in the household on the money. So those are the demos we want, right? But 25 to 54 at 7 a.m., we're usually one or two. Now keep in mind at 7 a.m., we're the only local spot in town. Everybody goes to the Today Show, Good Morning America, and then whatever CBS does it now. It's like a 5-headed monster. They have like 6 anchors or something, or 5 anchors. I don't know what that show does. Terrible in ratings, just FYI. If anybody tries to get you advertising, it's the worst rated show in the morning. So it's tiered out. Our 9 o'clock dominant number one. And when I say that, so the other stations hate this. When I say we're a dominant number one, they'll go, well, it's because you're by yourself. That's true. We're not competing against another newscast. But our news number, I'll just give you an average. Our news number at that time frame is usually between a 3 and a 3.9, sometimes to a 4. The 10 o'clocks come in at a 2. So we're doubling what the 10 o'clocks are doing. So then when you take our 9 and our 10 and combine those numbers, we're up around a 5 or a 6, and the other stations hate that because they're saying that's not apples and oranges, right? Because at 10 o'clock, we're in 3rd place. But we've already done a full hour of news. We only started doing at 10 o'clock for the folks that love us at 9, but guess what we compete with at 9 o'clock? Every single night at 9 o'clock, prime time shows. Right? CBS, ABC, NBC, all, they take their prime to 10 o'clock. Fox ends at 9. So at 9 o'clock, we're competing against really high performing shows. And we still cream them sometimes. So it does really, really well. It's a convenience time spot. 10 o'clock, we got into the game only about 7 years ago. But our 10 o'clock was actually number one like 3 months ago, which also probably drove them all crazy. The other benefit that we have on Fox is one of the things that's doing really well in the TV world now is everybody can DVR stuff, right? Nobody DVRs news though. News is now and topical. Nobody wants to watch a repeat of news. Or, you know, if you DVR our news and then you watch it later at 10:30 and we're telling you about a thunderstorm bearing down on your house, too late, right? So nobody watches that. They DVR primetime programming. So in many instances, since we're competing with Prime, they'll DVR their Prime show and watch us at 9. If they want to watch their show at 9, then that's the reason we created it at 10. So if you're a Fox 21 and Sunday hands down like triples everything. And here's why. On Friday night, you're doing something. You're out doing something. You go to happy hour. You're ready for the weekend. Saturday rolls around, you're still hanging out, chilling. You're not worried about the news. You're not worried about things. Sunday, everybody wants to get caught up. So we're right there at 9 o'clock convenient. You can go to bed early. And what do people want at 9 o'clock on Sunday? They want to know the weather forecast for the week. That's what they're looking for. What is my week like? Especially during. So there's all the demos. There's the numbers. So when we get the media pitches, we start sorting through them. Here's how we do it. If you pitch us a super fantastic visual story, what show will you go with? The 9. Right? That's the mothership. That's where we're going to put our best content. If you pitch us that you have somebody that's willing to do an interview, we have no visuals. Still great content, not in the 9. First of all, at 9 o'clock, we don't do interviews. The interviews we either do in the 6:30 p.m. or we do in the morning show, or we do in Living Local at 9 o'clock. All those have a basis for an interview, and that's a sit-down one-on-one. So now what we're going to do is we're going to challenge you. Okay, if you say, I just have a person who's going to come in and talk, we call that the two-headed monster, right? And you see it on TV. It's the anchor and the person you're interviewing with no visuals, right? Not super compelling. How you make that compelling is if in the chair is Tom Cruise, right? That's how you make that compelling. Or somebody else famous, Taylor Swift. I'd love to have a one-on-one interview with Taylor Swift tonight at 9, because we'd be off the charts. And I wouldn't lay one piece of video over it. Because that's compelling. Most of the time, that's not what we're going to get from the nonprofits, right? You're going to get a person that's just sitting there. Now, fine, it's still great info, and it's still great exposure for you, and people still watch, and they listen. That's the other thing. In the morning, my favorite piece of research that we've ever seen, somebody took a camera and stuck it on top of a television, and then they just recorded. Okay, so at 9 o'clock, people come, sit down on a couch, they have their remote, and they're watching. When you replay what happens on the camera for the morning show, it was total chaos, right? And then every once in a while, somebody would stop and look at something, and then they'd go on, right? And it's total chaos. So what we teach the morning crew is a lot of people are just listening. So then our mind goes, okay, that's also a great spot for an interview, because you don't have to have a bunch of pictures. You don't have to have a bunch of video, because people are just listening. They're doing their thing, and you're the background. At 9 o'clock, it's more appointment TV. People sit down. Now, over the past 10 years, where that shifted is we have that same piece of video, but now people are sitting down to watch the newscast, and then they're doing this, right? So then in newscast land, we started to train our anchors, and we started to look up content, right? So that's where we're trying to get you to look up from your phone. And so we will say, and the morning crew's been doing this for years, because they'll say, hey, we've got compelling video to show you right now. And that's when you see the people stopping for the camera. What is it? Right? They don't do it with every single story because it would drive people nuts. So we'll put the interviews in the morning show, or the 6:30, or the 5, or Living Local. Depending on how many visuals you have, we may put you in the 6:30 because people are watching that a little bit more as opposed to passing in back and forth. The thing is, all of them have great exposure, because then they go to the website, and the website, it lives there forever. Now, the challenge with the website, which we found in TV land now, is we used to throw something out there, and if we made a mistake or somebody said a cuss word, it just went out there and it was gone. Now everything's captured forever, right? If you make a mistake. But the good news for stories is people can watch it over and over and over again. And that's good. That's good. So regardless of how you're getting the exposure at the TV station, we wanted you guys to know that that's how we tier it. So if you get the 9 o'clock, know that you pitched a heck of an idea that has great visuals. And we've actually tried to be more stingy about that, because, for instance, Youth Symphony used to be one that they almost always have something visual for us. It's musical, it's you can get down with a kid and they're playing a violin or whatever. It's very visual and very interactive for the viewer. But even then, we're like, let's put them on the side and see if one of these others come up with something that we can go tell that story. So we don't just mail it in with the big organizations that have the visuals always. Because again, some organization, the therapeutic riding, anybody here from the riding? I don't think anybody was, they always have good ones, right? They have a veteran on a horse, you know, or they have somebody that's disabled that gets a chance to, or I think one of them we did, there was somebody that was blind that got to go on a horse. Okay, great stories. Those are visual stories. They have sound to them, they have stuff. So that's the challenge for you guys. Find what that visual story piece is for you, that person that was touched. You want to pull the heartstrings so that people go, oh, wow, I totally want to give to that organization. And then they go online, they find you through Give, because that's when we do this the most, right? We do it October or November through December. People go on and then they find you and click on it and donate. That's the whole point and purpose of the whole thing. And I've always loved it because it gives the little nonprofits a chance. Because we always hear from the big nonprofits and they're super buttoned up usually. They can roll out 15 people for us. You know, it's a different ball game. So when the little guy can come around, and then what I've always loved, and I've said this before, and if you've heard it, I apologize, but there's one organization many years ago that I think made $7,000 or $8,000 through Give. And I remember talking with the individual afterwards. He's like, that's over half our operating budget for the year, right? And I'm just thinking, darn, they only got 7,000. He's like, woo, going nuts, because it's just not the world I think in. So it was so cool, and that's what our goal is. So we want to tell your story, but we need help. And what I used to tell the PR folks when I was in PR for that short amount of time, listen, we're only as good as the information you give us. You absolutely control the message. And listen, instead of 6 bullet points, because this is what I often hear too from PR people, well, I gave you 6 bullet points and you only heard 3. Were those the 3 you wanted? Did they make it? No, only 2 made it. Did you prioritize those 3? You gave us 6 and made us choose. So then I've got a 24-year-old reporter trying to pick what they think is the most important bullet points, right? So give us 3. Those 3 will go to TV. That's also a crisis management thing too, that we always tell people, you know, control the message, because we are only as good as, we still tell this to the PIOs and the police department. We can only, listen, if you don't fill in the gaps, the viewers do. So give us as much information as possible, but at least give us A, B, and C, right? So those are my tips for getting good stories into the TV land, because here's the deal. We want to tell good stories too, because that helps our viewers and they like it. And believe me, in the 9 o'clock, it's what we call a package, right? So a package, if you get the 9 o'clock, you get a package. And what that is that's a reporter who comes to you and does the story with you, interviews whomever you've asked them to interview, goes back to the station, puts their voice to it, intertwines, it's a package. So in TV world, we call that a package. The others are just interviews, or sometimes we'll do what's called the VO, and that's just the short one where the anchor only reads it. So my only point to telling you that is, if we commit to a package, it needs to be good, because we've trained viewers, and you guys all know, if the anchor tosses to a reporter, you know you're in for at least the 2 minutes, right? Like, okay, here we go. They're going to this guy. It must be the next 2 minutes. Whereas if we stay on anchors, we can go boom, 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 keep telling you stories. So if we toss to a package, it better be good. And so that's the point we try and make. So when you get that 9 o'clock coveted spot, you made a great pitch and we have a great story to tell. Any questions? Sure. Go for it. Okay.
So we don't photograph our residents, we don't interview them, or homes that are not disclosed location. I mean, other than having written quotes, people I don't really feel comfortable asking them for anything else. They don't want to be exploit them. And so how do we have an image or make something interesting? We like our inventors, our social media, like finding things to post with the report for us. So
Yeah.
Web advice.
So a couple things we can do. So we've had this before. If you do have somebody that's willing to tell their story, we can, what we call Tony the Tiger. Does anybody know what that means? You remember the Tony the Tiger commercials where they blacked him out and it was a voice because people didn't want to know it was Tony the Tiger? We can shoot their hands. Because sometimes it's just what they say is important. And if they don't want to be identified, we can black them out. We can change their voice. So we've dealt with those types of things, especially in the human trafficking world. We'll do those stories where we'll just show their feet, right? Or we'll show a distant shot with them blurred out. So those are the ways we can do it, because sometimes what they have to say is super compelling. But then you just have to find somebody brave enough to do it.
I wouldn't ask any of our friends.
Yeah.
And when you.
Right.
So you don't have to do the program, because then I think, you know, if we had graduates, that would be a great.
Totally. Yep. So yeah, either wait for the graduates, or what you're going to do is you're probably going to have an interview, but it's still very compelling and you can tell your story. It's just probably not going to be a package. But you can still tell a great story and say what our organization does, why this is a problem. So that's the other hint I'll give you is if you're, you know, sometimes people want to know, how does this impact me? So if you can think about that, like, how does my organization impact people? Is it super niche or is it more broad? That's another way to think about it. We try and do that all the time. Okay, because we feed you half the stuff. Here's the truth. Half the stuff we tell you at 9, you already know, because we fed it to you all day on your phone or social media, right? But most of you just read the headline. Like all day on my phone, I follow every station. I follow CNN, I follow Fox, so my phone just blows up all day. I just read the quick bullet. I don't usually click into it. So at night, we're trying to tell you, if you clicked into it, here's the details. Or how does it impact you? I just had this conversation with the newsroom today. The mayor gave his 50 days in speech yesterday to the media, right? And one of our teases in the newscast said, the mayor's 50 days in, find out what he had to say. I was like, how does that make me want to watch? That doesn't do it for me. So I told him no. The mayor's 50 days in, and he has a bucket list of stuff he wants to accomplish. And we're going to look at how it will impact you. Now I'm interested. Now I want to know, are you going to fix the roads? Are you going to, whatever it is, right? So you guys can think that way too, is how does it impact people? What's the broad spectrum? If you have it. If not, somebody who says, you know what, I was so touched by your organization. And I want to come out and speak for you guys. You're in any story we do in that topic is very difficult to find what they call survivors, or, you know, and when we find them, it does really well because people are interested in people's personal stories, right? You know, the other example from a viewer standpoint is if there was a story at one point where somebody shot into an apartment complex. And so some of the stations actually interviewed people who heard the shots, or they were, you know, across the street. Would you rather hear from that person or the person that was in one of the apartments and it went through and hit their clock? And then they're willing to tell you about that. That's a far more compelling story than the guy that walked by and said, yeah, I saw lots of cops and I heard gunshots. That's the concept. Make sense? Any other questions? Yes. Good visuals, stuff that makes noise, right? Because we can use that because we can get in there. Stuff that's easy, or, you know, easy to look at. Or here's some examples of good visuals. You have to figure out how this applies. When we've done the riding ones, those always do well. Puppies, flooding, hailstorms, right? All the things that are visually that people like to see, right? Or somebody playing an instrument, somebody in their home living life. That's better than just somebody where we bring into a library and you know, and we stick them here and we just interview them. I'd rather put a microphone on you and let you wander around and do stuff. Does that make sense? You have them? Yes.
So we did, have a spot last year.
Okay.
So we were in outdoor space.
Yes.
And we don't really do something like niche particularly.
Right.
Trail building, very our pieces in our trail system here. Not everyone, but a lot of our community does or have been on the system at some point.
Sure.
But we ended up being prepared. We have.
Yeah.
42 years.
Yes.
We have a lot of before and after. The work we do is very.
Yes.
We're on the ground, the volunteers, we ended up in I'm grateful for our spots.
No, of course, and that's not what this is. Okay. Okay.
Very hard for us to like sit down on the couch and have these trail people on the couch and like, hey, what do we do? Like,
Yeah.
so like it puts us one out of our elements. We have the very visual and then we obviously packages it what we did and making that pitch very understandable. But when you're put into the position of like, here, sit down and interview about your organization, I need to like show you what we do. And so it's like almost the opposite problem of we have lots of visuals, it can be very visual, but when we can't be visual,
Totally.
it's very hard.
So let me ask you this, did you guys bring video at all with you?
We were asked to provide.
Okay. So I can work, so Living Local has had a lot of turnover on the crew, so a lot of them don't get it, but I would suggest take charge of it too, say, I have a bunch of video I'm gonna bring. B-roll is the key word they like to hear. I've got B-roll for you, because we will cover that. I would probably wanna look at what the pitch was. Right, more specifically. If you pitch something specific, we can take you on a trail, we'd like to show you this damage section. Like if you're more specific, those help. And so it may have just been a point where, so what happens in the 9, so at 9 o'clock. What do we end up doing? Is it 60 days? I think from, it's November 1st to December 31st. We have a 9 every night. So when we have like in 1 year, I think we had 80 nonprofits, and then we're trying to only do, and we only do them, I don't think we do them every night. We do them once a week. So the 9 is very competitive. No, so I agree. So yeah, that's the hardest part, totally. Well, and then you've got the ones that all have good visuals and they're trying to fight for the pitches, right? Yeah, I totally get it. So in those instances, when those do happen, you're visual and you end up with one of those, bring the visuals. Right? Bring as much as you can. Yes. Take charge. Because I will tell you, the norm is we'll ask for 2 pictures and we'll maybe get 1. Or we get no video. Yeah, we'll ask, can we have video? No, we don't have any video. You know, it's so it's awesome that you actually can come loaded, right? And say, we've got stuff for you. So take charge of it, and that'd be a great way to help them. Yeah, totally.
So that's not live, so Living Local, not live, it's taped and then shown.
No, it is live. It's live. It goes 9 to 10. They do some stuff where they go and record it and bring it back. Some of their stuff, and we call those look lives. We try and make it look like it's live, but we don't ever say that.
So how does that work when you bring it?
So if you bring your visuals in, well, usually it's in advance. So when we reach out to you and schedule it, that's when you would want to say, you know what, we have a ton of B-roll, we have a ton of video. They'll say, send it. And then they'll put it in the system. So when you get there, where to have it. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's perfect. So get those visuals. And that's the other thing that often happens. If you have a big event that doesn't fall in the give window, get video of that event. Because then you can bring that to us when you do the interview segment. Oh, by the way, this is our big event that we hold every, August. There it is, right? And now we've got visuals to back up your organization. Because to your point, some just don't have great visuals. It happens. It totally happens. We call those in our business newspaper stories.
Feels very good.
I know, and it is. And so our general manager is really an advocate for human trafficking. And so she's on this task force. She's really active in it. She keeps saying, I need you to do this story. I need you to do this story. And we're like, how? Like, we need you to, you need your, and we finally found two people that had come from that to a completely different life now. And they spoke to it very well, were very articulate and brave, and it worked out great. But the majority of it, it's really hard to tell that story. I feel your pain because she's been trying to figure out how to get that on TV. And I'm just like, plus it's a difficult subject, right? It's just like when somebody, not to offend anybody, but anytime somebody says abortion into the newsroom, the whole newsroom goes, because no matter how we cover it, somebody's mad. Always. I hate doing those stories. And we have them to where we have a system. We will time it out. We will give 30 seconds to pro and 30 seconds to the other side. To a T, people are still mad. You gave them more time. But we were talking earlier, I get all kinds of wacky emails, right? When we opened we didn't open it. When Clinton opened his library, okay, it came from the national feed, and we said, hey, Bill Clinton opened his library in Little Rock or wherever it was. And I got emails that said, you didn't cover the other side. What is the other side? That George W. had one years ago, and oh, by the way, we have to put that in to counter it. Like, it was like, are you kidding me? So we're very careful about that stuff. But yeah, that's hard. Any other questions?
I think just to clarify, so the media pitches, those are going toward the during the campaign. And we're also doing flooding within the local in the mornings. But those are not necessarily those aren't the spots that the media pitches are for. Does that make sense? So those, the loving within the local ones will probably always be an image, right?
Yeah, so I should have probably explained that because I forgot about that element this year.
But that's okay.
So as we partnered with Give, when Indy went away, we stayed. Like, we weren't going to tuck our tail and run. We stayed. Our point was, we don't do this for pride on us. We do this to help the nonprofits. So sorry for whatever happened between the Indy and Give, but we're still going to tell the stories. So that was our stance. Then as we started to hang out with Give a little bit more and meet with their board, we pitched the idea, why don't we do this more year round and showcase these nonprofits? So we opted to use Living Local for that, because Living Local is a interview-based show. The whole show is mostly interviews. And so we decided we were going to start showcasing Give organizations year round. There's no ask or no sending somebody to the Give website after those. It's just your chance to tell us about your organization. So that's it. So those are definitely more of a interview style. But again, if you can bring some slideshows or bring some video, it makes it better. When we get to the November to December 31st timeframe, those are the Give pitches where we take your info, we put it on air, and then we tell people, go give to these people right now. Now, you can still do that on Living Local. It's just not we're crammed into that time frame of the Give campaign. Make sense? So that's new this year that we started to do because we wanted to help nonprofits year round.
So really what that means is you gotta polish up your skills on both ends of like the visuals and hoping that you get the package, but you also have to be able to interview them because you might be on one of them.
And sometimes the critique we get is, okay, we gave fair time to both sides. This is on like a controversial story, not a nonprofit, right? We gave somebody 15 seconds and we gave this side 15 seconds. Okay. If this person was more well-spoken and had a better message in their 15 seconds, that's not our fault. But man, we get grilled for it. And so that's the importance of the PR person, the mouthpiece, right? That's their importance is They take the information, present it in a very digestible way. And that's what we're always telling cops, stop using cop jargon. People don't like it. You know, when was the last time one of you fled from something? Right? You probably ran away. I have never said that person just fled from me. I've never said that in my life, right? And so I say to the cops, they ran away. It makes more sense. So they use that type of verbiage when they talk to us. Oh my gosh, if we interview a doctor, and I'm like, okay, man, you got to talk to me like I'm an 8th grader. Because when you start going off in that land, you lost the viewer. So you have to think of all those things when you're talking and making those pitches. And newsrooms guilty of it too. Like they'll write, when we have a wildfire in town, okay, if you and I were, if we were all sitting here and one of those trailers across the street caught fire and we started talking about it, we would say fire 15 times. We would say, oh my gosh, that fire is terrible. Look at that fire. Oh, the firefighters are here. Oh my gosh, the fire jumped to another one. We'd say fire, right? A producer, when they're writing out a newscast, they don't like writing fire 3 times, so they'll change it to blaze. And I always tell them, when was the last time you were out and you said, whoa, a blaze, right? We don't talk like that. We just don't. So that's what we're always working on. So you can think about that in your stuff. Conversational talking and writing is how we're supposed to do it. Any other questions? And Courtney, I have no idea how much time was allotted. Okay.
You don't have to. Yeah.
No, well, the other one, let me tell you another one I can't stand is when the meteorologist says white stuff. It's snow. These are all these little things, and the newsroom knows as soon as we hear the word blaze go across the TV, they'll just cringe and know that I'm either going to send a text or call. Because blaze is like a stripper. And have they ever called them blaze fighters? I've never heard them once called a blaze fighter. Right? So just say fire. Or one of the other days, somebody said it was the police sent us something ridiculous. And it was the equivalent of saying that a bank robbery was an unauthorized withdrawal of cash. Like that's the verbiage they used on something. So any other questions? Well, that's it. I mean, it's
Hello, loving.
yes.
Do you have any suggestions about like that couch and how to?
Yeah.
Because you watch that and it can be awkward.
It is. So a couple things we're working on our end. We're going to put a piece of plywood under the cushions because it's aged, right? So it's become, so here's the secret. If you look back at Johnny Carson, look at Jimmy Fallon, those couches are not comfortable. And if you ever sat in one, they're not comfortable. And it's by design. Yes, it makes you kind of, oh, this is kind of, but it looks good on TV because you're straight, your posture is better. Those couches kind of suck the guest in, and it looks like they're watching Sunday, afternoon football. So we're going to actually put a piece of plywood underneath, try and stiffen it up, and we're also ordering new couches. So, when you're there, I know that they'll tell you, hopefully they're telling you, it's a conversation. I can get into the comfort level of an interview. Think of it as, we're having a conversation and the viewer is eavesdropping. The only people who look at the camera are politicians or cheerleaders. Everyone else really doesn't look at the camera because it's not natural, with the exception of the anchors.
After I was done with the interview.
Yeah. And sometimes it kind of makes viewers a little uneasy, right? Because 98% of the interviews are shot to the side. So if I was interviewing you, I would set the camera up here and I would give her space on this side. And then I would go stand right here. And she would talk to me this way, right? That's TV. That's how we do it. Even in your favorite shows, if you look, they always give them an angle, right? The exception is the politician or the anchor. The anchor is centered up, but the anchor is talking to you. A politician will generally, if we do debates, the politicians will start talking to our anchor and then they'll turn the camera, right? Because that's what they're used to. That's what they're, especially the polished ones. John Suthers never looked at one of us. He went straight to the camera and talked to the people, right? But for most people, it's awkward. Plus, it's easier for you as a person to talk to someone because it's more conversational. So, and we even try and do that with the anchors. If you see the anchors looking at each other, even though one of them's not talking, that's the concept we're trying to portray is the anchors are having a conversation. You're the third party listening. So if you think about that when you're doing an interview, just have a conversation. Don't worry about it and look at the camera. That's it. That's probably the greatest tip. And then I always try and I know Living Local is getting better about this, but I anchored for 18 years and at 6:30 we had guests. We always had guests. And so I would go and try and talk to the guest before the show, or at least in a commercial break. Because they've gotten way, way better. There was a time where the first time you spoke to them was on camera, and then it's kind of awkward, right? So our group, we really pound that, get to know them, make them feel comfortable. Nava's especially good at it. Nava will come and talk your ear off before. He really makes it a point to do that. It makes a huge difference because it makes you more comfortable. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
And sorry if this information is already out there, but like, what are the parameters of the media pitch? Like, are you looking for a video that's cut and created in final edit or storyline, still pictures? What is the media pitch?
I'm pretty sure the pitch is just writing.
Okay.
Yep. And then you list the things you have. Yep. And we've added a couple of things in there, like what are your visuals? We've kind of helped, because in the beginning, it was just a vomit of information, and we'd have to be like, and us as media, we were like, we have so many questions. Like, because when we get a PR pitch and you've got our attention, we call with about 15 questions. So we're trying to help you guys in that. We've helped craft this pitch form for years. So it says, what visuals do you have? What story can you, those types of things. I think the visuals is the biggest one. And, some of you just don't have them, and I get it. I get it.
Yeah, and it's not due until September 9th. So if you can, like, start working on creating those visuals if you don't have them now.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I know Chris is here from First Tee. I'm a board member at First Tee. One of the challenges we've always had with First Tee is when I got on that board, I said, here's the problem with First Tee. People think golfers are rich. You aren't getting money. How do we break down that parameter? And I was saying, one of the things is find me a kid. This is why I always tell our director, find me somebody that was touched by it, that didn't become a professional golfer, but they learned life skills. They learned how to shake somebody's hand and look them in the eye. That's what that First Tee is really teaching. You're not teaching them how to be a scratch golfer. And so how do we tell that story? And so that's the kind of stuff we were thinking about. I'm also on the board for the Youth Symphony, another organization that people think symphonies are rich, right? Same concept. Find a kid that had no chance at having an instrument in his hand, and they give a scholarship and they give financial aid, all those things. And those are the stories that work. They just tell people's, it's that behind the scenes. Well, I don't have anything else. I mean, I could talk about TV stuff all day.
Thank you. And I've been messaging the key things to the Zoom people.
Good.
So
Good.
Yeah.
And the other thing that happens in this market, so and I always get this, I should have said this first, okay? There's Big Fox and Fox21. We aren't even close. And it may seem as simple as that when I say that, but I have to say that all the time. When Fox fired Tucker Carlson, I was just telling the girls before we had this meeting, I got 2 emails. I can't believe you fired Tucker Carlson. You are such a jerk. They thought I did. So I chose one of them. I wrote to one of them. I wrote to the one that was at least politer. The other one was full of, I'm surprised it didn't go to spam and had so many cuss words in it. And I wrote back and I said, thank you for the perceived power. I don't have it. Here's a contact to Fox National. Right? But this market has a hard time making that differentiation sometimes, just FYI. When Bill O'Reilly was on, he was always stirring the pot. We had people show up at Platt and Wooten, right? With signs protesting Bill O'Reilly. And so I went outside and I said, folks, do you want me to shoot video of this and send it to New York? Because he's not here. Right? But the confusion was Bill O'Reilly occasionally would do stuff from Focus on the Family studio and it would say Colorado Springs. So that really messed up the waters, right? So I always try and tell people that sometimes I'll enter a room and somebody will say, you're Fox News, man. Right? Now, I've also walked into a room and they're like, Fox News, come here, buddy. And they love me and they're giving me things. And I'm like, time out. Little Fox. So we're owned by Nexstar. Nexstar Broadcasting owns 210 television stations across the United States. They own 35 Fox affiliates, 37 NBC affiliates, 28 ABC affiliates. So we're not under the Fox guys. How we share content with Fox is, let's say, for instance, and this has even gotten easier because Nexstar has so many stations across all over the place. But the example I always use is Nexstar does not have a station in Atlanta. So if there was a big apartment fire or something crazy in Atlanta, we would get the video from the Fox station in Atlanta. They would share it through the pipeline. That's it. We don't take Sean Hannity stuff. We don't do Fox News stuff. We just don't do it. And we're under no mandate to do so. And if you watch our newscast, we're local. Everything we try and do is local because that's what's keeping broadcasting alive, right? In fact, we get frustrated because when the national media does something nasty, we get lumped in. Or if one of the stations, one of our competitors does something nasty, they think, we did it. We get lumped in, or the media, you're evil. So we're always trying to break those ties. But I've had to explain 1,000 times that we are not Fox News Channel. And we never will be. We did a focus group years ago, and we took the first 10 minutes of each newscast from the market, from each station. And we played it for a group like this, probably twice this size. And we played it. And they had meters where they could say, I like that, or they twist this way if they didn't like it. One of the stations in town had a bunch of national stuff in that A block, which is the first 10 minutes of the newscast. And we've trained viewers, right? Where's the most important part of the newscast? Usually the first 10 minutes. They put national stuff in there that had no ties to Colorado Springs. Lots of negativity. The viewers didn't like it. They're like, how's that impact me? It doesn't. Now, if it's the big wallop story of the day, right? Sadly, a big mass shooting in a school in another state, it will be, because that does have mass impacts and everybody's interested in, right? But that's the kind of stuff that we're always fiddling with, but we always have to explain to people we are not Fox News Channel because they will definitely be more standoffish. Or for many years, and it's still pockets of this town, you're embraced, right? They think I'm the greatest thing in the world, and I'm like, well, Fox 21 is not Fox Channel, Fox News Channel. All right, cool. Yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. Happy to help. We really just want to tell your story. To help you.
Thank you, Zoomers.